Mga bayani ng Pilipinas. Sino ba sila? Narito ang mga pambansang bayani ng Pilipinas. Dr. Jose P. Rizal. Ang pambansang bayani ng Pilipinas. Jose Rizal, in full Jose Protasio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda, born June 19, 1861, Calamba, Philippines, died December 30, 1896, Manila patriot, physician, and man of letters who was an inspiration to the Philippine nationalist movement. The son of a prosperous landowner, Rizal was educated in Manila and at the University of Madrid. A brilliant medical student, he soon committed himself to the reform of Spanish rule in his home country, though he never advocated Philippine independence. Most of his writing was done in Europe, where he resided between 1882 and 1892. In 1887 Rizal published his first novel, Noli Me Tangere, The Social Cancer, a passionate exposure of the evils of Spanish rule in the Philippines. A sequel, El Filibusterismo 1891, The Reign of Greed, established his reputation as the leading spokesman of the Philippine reform movement. He published an annotated edition 1890, reprinted 1958, of Antonio Morgay's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, hoping to show that the native people of the Philippines had a long history before the coming of the Spaniards. He became the leader of the propaganda movement, contributing numerous articles to its newspaper, La Solidaridad, published in Barcelona. Rizal's political program included integration of the Philippines as a province of Spain, representation in the Cortes, the Spanish Parliament, the replacement of Spanish friars by Filipino priests, freedom of assembly and expression, and equality of Filipinos and Spaniards before the law. Andres Bonifacio. Ama ng Katipunan. Si Andres Bonifacio I. de Castro 30 Nobyembre taong 1863 10 Mayo taong 1897, ay isang Pilipinong makabayan at revolusyonaryo na makikita sa 10 pisong barya na isyu ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Binansagan siyang ama ng Katipunan. Siya ang nagtatag at lumao naging supremo ng kilusang katipunan na naglayong makamtaan ang kasarinlan ng Pilipinas mula sa Espanya at nagpasimula ng himagsikang Pilipino. Kinikilala rin siya ng ilang mga dalubhasa sa kasaysayan bilang unang Pangulo ng Pilipinas, subalit hindi siya opisyal na kinikilala. Melchora Aquino. Ina ng Katipunan. Melchora Aquino de Ramos January 6, 1812 February 19, 1919, was a Filipina revolutionary who became known as Tandang Sora, Elder Sora, because of her age during the Philippine Revolution. She was known as the Grand Woman of the Revolution and the Mother of Balintawak for her contributions. Father Jose Burgos. Isa sa 3 paring martir. Gomburza. Jose Apolonio Burgos y Garcia was a Filipino Catholic priest, accused of mutiny by the Spanish colonial authorities in the Philippines in the 19th century. He was tried and executed in Manila along with 2 other clergymen, Mariano Gomez and Jacinto Zamora, who are collectively known as the Gomburza. Lapu-Lapu. Kalipulaco, ang bayani ng Mactan. Lapu-Lapu or Lapu-Lapu 1521, whose name was first recorded as Silapu-Lapu, was a dato of Mactan in the Visayas. He is best known for the Battle of Mactan that happened at dawn on April 27, 1521, where he and his warriors defeated the forces of Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan and his native allies Raja Humabon and Datu Zula. Magellan's death ended his voyage of circumnavigation and delayed the Spanish occupation of the islands by over 40 years until the expedition of Miguel López de Legazpi in 1564. Legazpi continued the expeditions of Magellan, leading to the colonization of the Philippines for 333 years. Modern Philippine society regards him as the first Filipino hero because of his resistance to imperial Spanish colonization. Monuments of Lapu-Lapu have been built all over the Philippines to honor Lapu-Lapu's bravery against the Spaniards. The Philippine National Police and the Bureau of Fire Protection use his image as part of their official sales. Besides being a rival of Raja Humabon of neighboring Cebu, very little is reliably known about the life of Lapu-Lapu. The only existing primary source mentioning him by name is the account of Antonio Pigafetta, and according to historian Rizal B. Mojares, no European who left a primary record of Magellan's voyage vessel knew what he looked like, heard him speak. His recorded words of defiance and pride are all indirect, or mentioned that he was present in the Battle of Mactan that made him famous. His name, origins, religion, and fate are still a matter of controversy. Emilio Jacinto, utak ng Katipunan. Emilio Jacinto y Dizon, December 15, 1875 – April 16, 1899, was a Filipino general during the Philippine Revolution. He was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Philippine Revolution and was one of the highest-ranking officers of the Revolutionary Society. Kataas-taasan, kagalang-galang na katipunan ng mga anak ng bayan, or simply and more popularly called Katipunan, being a member of its Supreme Council. He was elected Secretary of State for the Haring Bayang Katagalugan, a revolutionary government established during the outbreak of hostilities. He is popularly known in Philippine history textbooks as the brains of the Katipunan, while some contend he should be rightfully recognized as the brains of the revolution, Filipino, utak ng himagsikan, a title that is usually given to Apolinario Mabini. Jacinto was present in the so-called Cry of Pugadlawin or Cry of Balintawak, with Andres Bonifacio, the Supreme President of the Katipunan, and others of its members, which signaled the start of the revolution against the Spanish colonial government in the islands. Juan Luna, dakilang pintor ng Spolarium. Juan Luna de San Pedro y Novicia Anchieta, October 23, 1857 – December 7, 1899, was a Filipino painter, sculptor and a political activist of the Philippine Revolution during the late 19th century. He became one of the first recognized Philippine artists. His winning the gold medal in the 1884 Madrid Exposition of Fine Arts, along with the silver win of fellow Filipino painter Felix Resurrección Hidalgo, prompted a celebration which was a major highlight in the memoirs of members of the propaganda movement, with the fellow ilustrados toasting to the two painters, good health and to the brotherhood between Spain and the Philippines. Regarded for work done in the manner of European academies of his time, Luna painted literary and historical scenes, some with an underscore of political commentary. His allegorical works were inspired with classical balance, and often showed figures in theatrical poses. Jose Abad Santos, ikalimang punong hukom ng Korte Suprema. Jose Abad Santos Ibasco in February 19, 1886 – May 2, 1942, was the fifth Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines. He briefly served as the acting President of the Commonwealth of the Philippines and acting Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines during World War II, on behalf of President Quezon after the government went in exile to the United States. After about 2 months, he was executed by the Japanese forces for refusing to cooperate during their occupation of the country. Together with Josefa Lianes Escoda and Vicente Lim, he is memorialized on the Philippines, 1,000 peso banknote depicting Filipinos who fought and died resisting the Japanese occupation of the Philippines during the Second World War. Father Mariano Gomez, isa sa tatlong paring martir. Gomburza. Mariano Gomes de los Angeles, often referred to by his original birth name Mariano Gomez de los Angeles, was a Filipino Catholic priest, who was falsely accused of mutiny by the Spanish colonial authorities in the Philippines in the 19th century. He was placed in a mock trial and summarily executed in Manila along with 2 other clergymen collectively known as the Gomburza. Gomez was the head of the 3 priests and spent his life writing about abuses against Filipino priests. Emilio Aguinaldo, unang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Emilio Aguinaldo, March 22, 1869 – February 6, 1964, was a Filipino revolutionary, statesman, and military leader who is officially recognized as the first and the youngest president of the Philippines 1899-1901, and the first president of a constitutional republic in Asia. He led Philippine forces first against Spain in the Philippine Revolution 1896-1898, then in the Spanish-American War 1898, and finally against the United States during the Philippine-American War 1899-1901. Aguinaldo remains a controversial figure in Filipino history. Though he has been recommended as a national hero of the Philippines, many have criticized him for his involvement in the deaths of revolutionary leader Andres Bonifacio and General Antonio Luna, as well as his sympathies for the Japanese Empire during their occupation of the Philippines in World War II. Father Jacinto Zamora, isa sa tatlong paring martir. Gomburza. Jacinto Zamora y del Rosario, August 14, 1835 to February 17, 1872, was a Filipino Catholic priest, part of the Gomburza, a trio of priests who were falsely accused of mutiny by the Spanish colonial authorities in the Philippines in the 19th century. Together with Josefa Llanes Escoda and Vicente Lim, he is memorialized on the Philippines, 1,000 peso banknote depicting Filipinos who fought and died resisting the Japanese occupation of the Philippines during the Second World War. Gabriela Silang, Joan of Arc ng Ilocandia. Si Gabriela Silang 19 Marso taong 1731 20 Setyembre taong 1763, ay ang unang Pilipinong babae na namuno sa isang paghihimagsik noong kolonisasyon ng mga Kastila sa Pilipinas. Nang namatay ang asawa niyang si Diego Silang, ipinagpatuloy niya ang pinaglalaban ng asawa. Siya ay ipinanganak bilang Maria Josefa Gabriela Carino Silang noong 19 Marso 1731 sa Canyogan, Ilocos Sur Santa, Ilocos Sur. Siya ay nagpakasal laban sa kanyang kagustuhan nang siya ay isa pa lamang menor de edad. Ang lahat ng mga pangyayaring iyon ay pawang kagustuhan lamang ng kanyang ama. Natupad ang nais ng ama ni Gabriela nang napunta kay Gabriela ang kayamanan ng kanyang asawa nang ito ay namatay at siya ay maagang nabiyuda. Lumipas ang ilang taon at napangasawa naman ni Gabriela si Diego Silang. Magiting na lumaban si Diego sa mga Kastila at napalaya ang Vigan. Sila ay nanirahan sa Vigan magmula noong Setyembre, 1762, hanggang sa mamatay si Diego at muli nitong pagkabiyuda. Ang naudlot na pakikipaglaban ni Diego Silang ay buong giting niyang ipinagpatuloy. Subalit sa kasamaang palad, ang kanyang puwersa ay nawalang laban sa libu-libong lakas ng mga Kastila at kawalan interes ng mga Ingles nang nilagda ng kasunduan sa pagtatapos ng 7 taong digmaan sa Paris noong Pebrero taong 1763. Si Gabriela ay dinakip at binitay noong 20 Setyembre taong 1763. Siya ay tinaguri ang unang babaeng general at unang babaeng martir dahil sa kanyang katapangan at kagitingan para sa kapakanan ng bayan. Ang kanyang katapangan ang naging inspirasyon ng pagtatag ng partido pampulitika na Gabriela. Apolinario Mabini, dakilang paralitiko. Apolinario Mabini Imaranan July 23, 1864 May 13, 1903, was a Filipino revolutionary leader, educator, lawyer, and statesman who served first as a legal and constitutional advisor to the revolutionary government, and then as the first Prime Minister of the Philippines upon the establishment of the First Philippine Republic. He is regarded as the utak ng himagsikan, or brain of the revolution, and is also to be considered to be as a national hero in the Philippines. Mabini's work and thoughts on the government shaped the Philippines' fight for independence over the next century. Two of his works, El Verdadero Decalogo, The True Decalogue, June 24, 1898, and Programa Constitucional de la República Filipina, The Constitutional Program of the Philippine Republic, 1898, became instrumental in the drafting of what would eventually be known as the Malolos Constitution. Mabini performed all his revolutionary and governmental activities despite having lost the use of both his legs to polio shortly before the Philippine Revolution of 1896. Mabini's role in Philippine history saw him confronting first Spanish colonial rule in the opening days of the Philippine Revolution, and then American colonial rule in the days of the Philippine-American War. The latter saw Mabini captured and exiled to Guam by American colonial authorities, allowed to return only 2 months before his eventual death in May 1903. Ngayon alam mo na ang mga bayani ng Pilipinas. Kaya binabati kita sa iyong pagbibigay ng oras. Marami pong salamat.